Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. It was a regular afternoon at Danvers High School. Most students had already left, and the hallways were quiet. But inside a second-floor bathroom, something terrible was happening. A well-loved teacher had just finished her last class of the day. She had no idea that one of her students was watching her, waiting for the right moment. Minutes later, security cameras caught something strange. Him walking out, hood up, hands covered in blood. He moved through the school like nothing had happened, casually talking to classmates, grabbing his things, and disappearing into the night. No one knew the dark secret he had just left behind. Not yet. Philip Chisholm was born on January 21, 1999, in Clarksville, Tennessee. From a young age, he showed a keen interest in sports, and by the time he entered high school, he had already made a name for himself as a talented soccer player. His skills on the field were undeniable, and in 2012, his teammates credited him as the driving force behind their championship win in the league. To those around him, Philip seemed like a friendly yet reserved young man. No one suspected that beneath his quiet demeanor, he was battling deep personal struggles. Philip's home life was far from stable. His father, a former military officer, had succumbed to alcoholism and frequently subjected him to both physical and emotional abuse. Heated arguments with his wife, Diana Chisholm, were a regular occurrence. By the fall of 2013, the tension had reached a breaking point, and the couple decided to separate. Philip was uprooted from the life he knew and moved with his mother to a small town in Massachusetts, while his father relocated to Florida. As part of their divorce agreement, his father was only permitted limited visitation with Philip. Practically overnight, his world had changed completely. Adjusting to a new environment proved difficult for Philip. Already introverted, he struggled to find his place at his new school. Socializing didn't come easily to him, but over time, he began to open up. He gradually integrated into school life, even trying out for the basketball team. Though he made friends, he was selective about whom he spent time with, limiting his conversations in class to only a few people he deemed trustworthy. His quiet, withdrawn nature led many to see him as a reserved but otherwise normal teenager. He stayed away from alcohol and drugs, never drawing much attention to himself. However, beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. Philip found academics particularly challenging. Rather than engaging with his lessons, he often retreated into his own world, sketching in his notebook and listening to music instead of paying attention in class. It was during this time that he crossed paths with Colleen Ritzer, one of the most beloved teachers at the school. Known for her ability to connect with students, Colleen had dreamed of becoming a teacher from a young age. Excelling in mathematics, she pursued it as her career. She earned her degree in mathematics with a specialization in secondary education and began teaching 8th grade math that same year. Her dedication to her students was unmistakable. She frequently stayed after school to offer extra help and used social media to engage with them. When Philip arrived at the school, Colleen quickly noticed his academic struggles. Understanding that he was going through a rough time, she saw potential in him and believed he just needed some guidance to get back on track. However, unlike most of his classmates, Philip showed no interest in her efforts. On the morning of October 22, 2013, Philip arrived at Danvers High School carrying multiple bags. Inside them were gloves, a change of clothes, a mask, and a box cutter, items that had nothing to do with schoolwork. Later that day, he attended Colleen's class. As the lesson ended, she approached him to compliment his artwork and offered to stay after school to help him prepare for an upcoming test. Philip's reaction was anything but appreciative. Instead, he erupted into an angry outburst. Colleen attempted to calm him down, but he stormed off. At around 3 p.m., Colleen made her way to the restroom, unaware that Philip was following closely behind. The school had mostly emptied by that time. Moving stealthily, he entered the restroom, now wearing gloves and clutching the box cutter. Without warning, he lunged at her, covering her mouth with a cloth to silence her. He then overpowered her, assaulting her before stabbing her at least 16 times. The attack was interrupted when another student entered the restroom, searching for better phone reception. She caught a glimpse of Philip but assumed he was merely changing for soccer practice. Not realizing the horror unfolding just a few feet away, she left without raising any alarm. Unbeknownst to her, she had just come face to face with a killer. After nearly being discovered, Philip exited the bathroom with his hood pulled up and one hand covered in blood. He walked toward the school's parking lot with a chilling goal in mind: finding a dumpster to dispose of the body. Along the way, he casually greeted several friends, none of whom had the slightest idea of the horrific act he had just committed. Shortly after, he changed out of his clothes, swapping them for a white t-shirt and a red hoodie. With the trash bin now in his possession, he re-entered the bathroom. This time, he emerged wearing a ski mask and concealing his teacher's lifeless body. He then made his way to the elevator. Once outside, Philip dragged the container to a wooded area behind the school. There, he desecrated Colleen's body using a tree branch before covering her remains with dry leaves. He left behind a cryptic note that read, "I hate everyone. I was high on power." Acting as if nothing had happened, he returned to the school, though his slightly disheveled appearance should have raised suspicion. However, no one took notice, allowing him to calmly retrieve his belongings from his locker and leave the premises. Philip believed he had committed the perfect crime, but he was gravely mistaken. Hours later, his mother grew concerned when she realized he was missing. She went to the nearest police station and filed a missing person report. Meanwhile, Philip's soccer teammates also noticed his absence from practice and began searching for him, growing increasingly worried. Law enforcement quickly acted, requesting Philip's phone provider to track his last known location. The signal was traced near Hollywood Hits Theater. Investigators headed there and discovered he had purchased a movie ticket before vanishing. Shortly after, his phone was powered off. At 9 p.m., Danvers High School principal sent an email to staff informing them of Philip's disappearance. Not long after, a math teacher called her with a disturbing revelation. Colleen Ritzer's parents had also reported their daughter missing. What made the situation even more alarming was that Philip had been in Colleen's last class that day. There was a growing possibility that the two had been together before vanishing. Colleen's parents frantically tried to reach her, but their calls went unanswered. At around 11 p.m., they officially reported her missing. The police tracked her phone's last location and discovered it had been in the school area. With two missing persons from the same institution, officers grew increasingly suspicious and decided to investigate. Their first alarming discovery was that Colleen's car was still in the school's parking lot. Something was clearly wrong. Upon entering the building, they inspected the second-floor bathroom, where they were met with a gruesome sight. Bloodstains covered the area, and Colleen's purse lay abandoned nearby. A blood-smeared recycling bin stood ominously in the corner. Following the trail, officers searched the wooded area behind the school. There, they found clothing soaked in blood, clothing that unmistakably belonged to Colleen. The horrific evidence confirmed that something terrible had taken place. Authorities immediately began questioning students and staff, hoping to find witnesses. One student stepped forward, recalling an unsettling exchange he had overheard between Philip and Colleen while organizing his locker. He had heard Philip raising his voice at the teacher while she attempted to calm him. The student assumed Philip was upset because Colleen had asked about his family, unintentionally reminding him of his parents' divorce. Although she quickly changed the topic, Philip remained agitated, eventually muttering to himself. The student had sensed something was off but never imagined Philip was capable of violence. He wasn't the only one with a key piece of information. A female student came forward, recounting how she had seen Philip naked in the bathroom that afternoon. Another witness, a mother picking up her child at around 3:30 p.m., reported seeing Philip hastily leaving the school. The evidence was mounting. Something had happened between Philip and Colleen. Detectives then turned to the school's surveillance footage, hoping to piece together the events leading up to the disappearances. What they found painted a disturbing picture. At 7:45 a.m., Philip arrived at school carrying multiple bags, which he placed inside his locker. At 2:54 p.m., Colleen was seen leaving a classroom and heading toward the second-floor women's restroom. A minute later, Philip appeared in the hallway, watching her closely before briefly returning to the classroom. Moments later, he re-emerged, this time with his hood up, and followed her into the bathroom while slipping on gloves. At 3:06 p.m., a female student was captured entering the bathroom, only to rush out moments later. At 3:07 p.m., Philip exited, hood still up, and made his way to the parking lot. When he returned 2 minutes later, he had changed into a white t-shirt. Minutes passed, and he was seen again, now wearing a red hoodie. At 3:16 p.m., he re-entered the bathroom, this time with a recycling bin. By 3:22 p.m., security footage captured him donning a ski mask while pushing the bin into the elevator. Shortly afterward, he was seen dragging it outside toward the student parking lot. Later that evening, Philip returned to the school, entered the bathroom once more, and changed his clothes. This time, he was barefoot and wearing a black hoodie. By the time investigators finished reviewing the footage, there was no doubt in their minds. Colleen had entered that bathroom but never came out. Meanwhile, Philip had gone in and out multiple times, each time wearing different clothes and, at one point, pushing a large bin. Combined with the blood evidence found in the bathroom, there was only one logical conclusion. Colleen had been murdered, and Philip was their prime suspect. Law enforcement wasted no time in their efforts to track down Philip, who was still missing. They reviewed security footage from outside the school and surrounding streets, hoping to catch a glimpse of his movements. At the same time, they kept a close watch on Colleen Ritzer's bank account. Philip had stolen her wallet, including her credit cards, making it likely that he had already used them. Their instincts were correct. Transactions showed that Colleen's card had been used to purchase a burger, fries, and a drink. Additionally, a movie ticket had been bought for the film Gravity, matching location data from Philip's phone, which had placed him at the theater shortly after the crime. As police scrambled to locate him, fate intervened. At around 2:30 a.m. on October 23rd, an officer in a nearby town spotted a young man walking along the highway at the intersection of Route 1 North and Salem Road. It was Philip, wandering aimlessly with no clear destination. The officer recognized him from the missing person alert and stopped to question him. Upon searching the teenager, the officer discovered Colleen Ritzer's credit card and driver's license. But that wasn't all. Philip's pants were still stained with blood. He was immediately taken into custody and brought to the local police station. When officers searched his backpack, they found Colleen's purse, her underwear, and a box cutter covered in dried blood. Even more disturbingly, traces of semen and blood were discovered on Philip's own underwear. When asked about the source of the blood, Philip responded coldly, "It's from the girl," referring to his teacher with eerie detachment. He showed no sign of remorse. Without hesitation, he also told police that she was buried in the woods. At 3 a.m., a team of officers arrived at the wooded area behind Danvers High School. After searching for some time, they noticed a pile of leaves and debris. Initially, it seemed unremarkable, but just as they were about to leave, an officer spotted a thumb with pink nail polish peeking through the dried leaves. Lifting the foliage, they uncovered a horrifying sight. Colleen's lifeless body lay on her back, her throat slashed, and a tree branch violated her remains. Her face and body bore signs of severe trauma. Nearby, officers found a pair of white gloves, soaked in blood, along with a handwritten note that read, "I hate everyone." Colleen's remains were swiftly transported for forensic examination. The autopsy confirmed that she had sustained 16 stab wounds and had been sexually assaulted twice. Philip was immediately charged with aggravated assault, armed robbery, and first-degree murder. He was held without bail. That same morning, on October 23rd, police visited Philip's mother at the apartment she had moved into after leaving Tennessee following her divorce. Visibly distressed, she admitted that the separation had been difficult for both her and her son. Later, through Philip's attorney, she issued a statement expressing her condolences to Colleen's family. Philip's uncle, however, took a different stance. He speculated that something must have provoked his nephew, arguing that teenagers often get angry and that Philip was only 14 years old. He went on to describe him as a storybook child, with a perfect family, seemingly downplaying the severity of his actions. Philip's former soccer coach expressed a similar sentiment, stating that he wanted to know the whole story before passing judgment on the teenager. Meanwhile, Rayleigh Doyle, a schoolmate, struggled to make sense of the tragedy. She expressed disbelief, saying she couldn't understand why anyone would harm Colleen, whom she described as kind-hearted and compassionate. Colleen's family, deep in mourning, was equally devastated. On October 28, 2013, the community gathered to say their final goodbyes at her funeral, held at St. Augustine Church. The service was deeply emotional, drawing nearly 1,000 attendees, including 400 of Colleen's students from Danvers High School. Many wore pink, her favorite color. Outside the church, pink flowers adorned the entrance as a symbol of the love and admiration she had inspired in those who knew her. Gina McDaniel, Colleen's cousin, spoke with deep emotion about how the sheer number of people gathered at the funeral was a testament to the impact Colleen had on her community. She reflected on how, despite her short life, Colleen had left an indelible mark on education, inspiring countless students through her dedication and passion for teaching. Gina also highlighted Colleen's deep love for her siblings and her unwavering commitment to being a great friend and mentor. With a voice filled with sorrow and admiration, she described Colleen as the kind of person every parent hopes their child will grow up to be. Reverend Peter Gregory offered words of comfort, urging those in attendance to shift their focus from the tragic way Colleen's life ended to the meaningful and purposeful way she had lived. His message resonated with the grieving crowd, encouraging them to remember Colleen for the light she had brought into the world. Months later, while being held at a juvenile detention center in Boston, Philip struck again. On June 2, 2014, he slipped into a staff locker room bathroom and attempted to strangle and kill a 29-year-old medical staff member. It took multiple employees to subdue him as he screamed repeatedly, "I'm going to kill all of you." Though he failed to take her life, he left the woman severely injured. A new case was opened against him, but before facing trial for this attack, he still had to stand trial for the murder of Colleen Ritzer. Philip's defense attorney admitted that her client had killed the teacher but argued that he should not be held criminally responsible. She claimed that at the time of the murder, he was experiencing a psychotic episode and suffering from severe mental illness, even alleging that he had been hearing voices before committing the crime. The prosecutor, however, firmly rejected this argument. She insisted that Philip did not suffer from any mental illness and presented surveillance footage from the school as proof. The videos showed him methodically following Colleen into the restroom, attacking her, then coldly placing her body into a recycling bin before wheeling it outside. She also pointed out how, after committing the murder, Philip was able to casually greet friends, eat a meal, and watch a movie, all while carrying evidence of his crime in his backpack. After hearing the prosecution's argument, the court dismissed the defense's plea for criminal insanity, ruling that Philip was mentally competent to stand trial. Given that the minimum age for criminal prosecution in the United States is 14, he could be tried as an adult. On December 15, 2015, a jury found Philip guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and armed robbery. As the judge read the verdict, Philip stood in silence, his hands cuffed, his face expressionless. Colleen's mother, devastated by the lack of remorse, declared that Philip was truly evil and beyond rehabilitation. "Our family will never get a second chance with Colleen, and he shouldn't get one either," she said. Despite these heartbreaking testimonies, Philip showed no reaction. He did not flinch, did not display a shred of empathy or regret for the life he had taken or the family he had shattered. On February 26, 2016, the court sentenced Philip to 40 years in prison. He would not be eligible for parole until he turned 54. But this was not the last time he would face sentencing. A decade later, on April 26, 2024, he stood trial once again, this time for the attempted murder of the medical worker at the Boston Juvenile Facility. The courtroom was tense as his attorney stated that Philip wished to take full responsibility and resolve the matter swiftly. However, to those present, it was clear he showed no true remorse. The medical professional he had attacked described Philip in unflinching terms, calling him a monster and a remorseless killer. She recounted the harrowing experience, stating that he had brutalized her with clear intent to take her life. As she testified, she admitted that his face still haunted her, a constant reminder of the trauma he had inflicted. She urged the court to ensure that Philip remained behind bars for life so that no one else would ever suffer at his hands. The judge ultimately handed down a sentence of 17 to 20 years for the attack, to be served concurrently with his existing sentence for Colleen's murder. To this day, Philip remains in prison, serving time for the crimes he committed against two women who had only ever tried to help him, yet who, in return, were met with unimaginable violence. Despite their grief, Colleen's family sought to honor her memory rather than dwell on her tragic death. 1 year after the murder, they established a scholarship in her name. In a public statement, they described Colleen as a kind, compassionate young woman whose passion for teaching had shaped her life. The Ritzers have found solace in knowing that her legacy endures. Many of the students who have received the scholarship have chosen to become teachers themselves, inspired by the very same dedication and love for education that Colleen embodied. Though she is no longer here, her impact continues to be felt, her influence living on in the classrooms and hearts of those who were touched by her life. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.